Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Wonderful. It seems as if we have really started out well. And this is one of my favorite things to do, a fireside chat with a leader. The Women's Forum Fireside Chats, they're aiming this week to highlight leaders who take a stance on societal topics. And the first topic that we are attacking here for Women's Forum 2019 is leaders taking a stand, taking the lead for inclusion, specifically how have leaders taking a courageous and inclusive stand on thorny societal challenges and how they're empowering others to do the same. And I'm going to introduce you formally to our guests. Since taking over as chairman and CEO in 2005, François-Henri Pinault has transformed Kering into a global luxury group. He joined the Pinault Group in 1987, where he held senior positions in several of the group's operating companies before joining its executive board, where he took charge of Kering's operations as chairman and CEO in 2005. In addition to holding several other board positions, François chairs the Kering Corporate Foundation, which was launched in 2008. In other words, he's the real deal. So please welcome François-Henri Pinault. François, I was chatting with you earlier, telling you just what a fan I am of the stances you have taken in the past. I told you I felt like it was a part of your DNA. So where does your drive for inclusiveness, empowerment, and gender diversity come from? Where does it personally come from?
Well, it comes back to the year 2006 precisely, and it's a combination of professional commitment and private life. 2006 was the year I started to transform what was a conglomerate to, as you mentioned, a pure luxury player. It started there, and it was a profound transformation of the group, perimeters, organization, values, culture. And it was also the year I met my wife, and thanks to Salma, she introduced me to Eve Ensler in New York, and Eve made me aware of what was the reality of violence on women. And I'm talking about the Kering at the time, or what was the name of the company at the time, because in my conviction, I cannot imagine any company without commitments on the field of social responsibilities, but the transformation of my group meant also a transformation of my social responsibilities. What would be the next responsibilities I would be committing to as a new group? And the cause of women was very enlightening for me, because in the transformation of Kering, we were becoming a very feminine group in terms of my employees, 63%.
That's a good thing. We like that.
Yeah. And also we're talking to the extent of probably 80% to female customers. So, and also the idea of a social commitment needs to be close to who you are as a corporation, but also it should be a cause ideally where you can really have an impact as a company. And at the time, violence on women was an orphan cause. It was something felt as frightening. I had many people around me telling me, well, are you sure you want to talk about that? Are you sure you want to, as a future luxury company, endorse that cause? And I said, yes, that's exactly why I'm doing it. So,
I'm sure your marketing department did not really want you to take that on.
Not only them, my board of directors, they would ask me twice, 3 times. But again, that's situation at the time where one woman out of 3, as we all know, is or will be a victim of violence. The fact that it's across culture, across social classes, everywhere. So I said, well, and even a company of our size, which is not that big, could have really an impact by taking a stance on that cause and really being proactively working on that situation to make it better.
And it's particularly interesting right now that you're here and putting this back on our front burner, because we're just a few days before the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, which is November 25th. And Kering has continued their work in that particular area. Am I right?
Yeah, of course. And so I decided to embrace that cause. I founded the Kering Foundation a little bit later in 2008 to really dedicated our action on fighting violence on women. And
Francois, what's the mission of the Kering Foundation? What's its purpose?
It's really, well, first of all, we work with a very limited number of NGOs that we choose very carefully to be very proactively working on the field on those situations. Twofold. One is to support those organizations centered on victims of violence in the different continents. And the other one is to raise awareness, to really work closely on raising awareness, not just outside, but also internally. And just to tell you, since then, we have training programs for the executive committee of Kering, for all executive committee of all my brands. It's compulsory for them to be trained on what's the reality of domestic violence, how to detect it, what to do when it happens, or when there's someone around you that could be a victim of that. So we really embrace that through those two types of operations, awareness and protection of survivors.
It seems very proactive, so it's just not a cause that you talk about. It's a cause that the company embraces, the foundation embraces, and thus it translates into what the employees do.
Oh yeah, we have very specific and operational program on sexual harassment on campuses in America, for instance. So we've been working on traditional harmful practices, sexual practices like excision in Western Europe, in France in particular. We help building the Maison des Femmes in Clichy here to help victims of those practices. Domestic violence in China is a very big deal for us. So yes, we are very, very on top of it, yes.
What have been some of the challenges that you've faced with the formation of the Kering Foundation and actually just growing it?
Well, there's so many things to do. So you need to be very focused and trying to not to go everywhere at the same time. So really we ended up taking care of survivors, providing them through those organizations support services, healthcare, education also, so empowering them also as a prevention against violence, and also trying to focus on when it comes to awareness, on campaigns that have a real impact. And we did that not only internally but externally through different campaigns. One was on sexual violence on campuses in America that was very strong, for instance. So it's really to try not to answer yes to everything, but really to consistently work on the same topic with those NGOs and being very dedicated to that, yes.
So I want to move to actually the Kering Corporation now. The foundation is a part of who you are, and you were inspired to begin that. But you took it a step further. You brought it into your corporate life and incorporated it into the structure and foundation of Kering.
Yeah, well, it was a matter of being logic with myself. One of the causes of violence is gender parity, as simple as that. So why on one side being actively working on fighting against violence, and on the other side not trying to improve the situation when it comes to gender parity, gender equality inside the company. So at the same time, back in 2006, 2007, we started internally through the HR organization of the group to work on those issues, providing training programs for our teams, mentoring programs for women, by women or by men, by the way, all type of things to try to really improve the situation. Of course, equality in terms of remuneration is one thing that we commit to very, very strongly. Trying to give the equal chances, equal opportunities in their career, being aware of why those situations arise in terms of why women are not represented as they should be in executive committee in the highest rank of the company, even though you have the will of that. It's not happening by itself, so you need to be aware of why is that and work on that. So we've been working a lot on all those situations. We put in place, for instance, some practices to try to rebalance a little bit more private life and professional life. One of the last one was in September when we announced a new parental policy inside the group, offering 14 weeks of maternity leaves, paternity leaves, partner leaves, adoption leaves all over the world to men and women.
So that really does integrate life and work. I'm always hesitant when I hear companies want to help with work-life balance, but it seems like you have made it your mission to work with work-life integration so that your life and your work can be integrated.
Yeah. And it's very linked. You know, this parental policy, when you hire someone and you have a young woman and a young man, same skills, you have unconscious bias that will push you towards the guy because, well, between 20 to 40 years old, the probability of them having a kid is very high, so let's go towards the guy. He won't. Now, whatever they are, mother or father, they will take 14 weeks, so it's the same, parity.
You know, Francois, it's so interesting that you bring that example up because that is really one of the data points that I can point out that when you do have same skills, women and men in that same age group, the unconscious bias is the thought that the woman is going to have a child and probably need to take time off. The unconscious bias towards the man is they're probably going to become a father and they're going to need to advance. So they look at the exact same situation, but from a gender bias perspective.
No, that's right. And the other element also on really pushing very strongly and proactively on gender parity is that we have this conviction inside the group that we're here to build collective intelligence. Our long-term performance will be based on that collective intelligence. And one of the prerequisites of a collective intelligence in the history of mankind is gender parity. As simple as that.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Yeah. In addition to what you have done internally, I know that you were very, very proactive with the Models Charter. Can you help us understand that?
Yeah, it's one initiative that we took specific to our industry, of course, and the situation, we realized that the situation of models during fashion shows and showrooms were absolutely not acceptable the way it was. So we decided with LVMH to write a charter to define the rules on which we commit when it comes to work with models, and because also we work with through intermediaries, agencies, so making sure that everyone is respecting the rules. So no more size 32 in France or 0 in America, no more, this is banned. We don't work with model in the charter below 16 years old, and if they're 16 to 18, they have a chaperone. But more than that, this year we decided, but this is only Kering, we moved to 18 years old. So none of my brand are working with models below 18.
That really, Francois, is becoming a thought leader when it comes to gender empowerment. There's no question whatsoever, including, what about the Cannes Film Festival? I know that you started Women in Motion platform in 2015.
Yeah, we decided to extend our mission beyond our industry and towards the movie industry, because this industry has so much power to influence the rest of the world through the empowerment of women and promotion of women through movies and behind or in front of the camera. And the representation of women in the movie industry was so poor. When we started that 5 years ago, we signed a partnership with the Cannes Film Festival 5 years ago, in which we brought that idea of what we call Women in Motion, which is really our support to the misrepresentation, against the misrepresentation of women in cinema, as I said, behind or in front of the camera. And by organizing talks during the festival every day with actresses, producers, all kind of important people in the movie industry, in front of the press to give a voice to those women in the movie industry. And then we probably contributed through that to the Me Too movement that happens in end of 17, and we're very proud of that. But there's still a lot of work to be done in that industry, not only in that industry, but in this one in particular.
And you were in the forefront before #MeToo. This was something that was just a part of where you were moving.
Let's say we started to hear about what was happening behind the scene in the movie industry during those talks. Pressure on women, situation when it comes to promotion and that type of thing. There was started to be discussed, at least by very specific person during our talks, yeah. And of course, we were not the only one, of course, but it came out. But it's still a lot to be done. Let's say that the wall of silence has been broken thanks to Me Too. Let's hope that this will end the impunity that was almost the rule in that field. But more importantly, let's hope that this will end up in laws in different countries, but that are enforced, because that's another topic of having laws protecting women, but they need to be enforced. So I hope that we will come to that. But then the next step for me, and it's in the foundation, it's to work on prevention program on young boys and young girls, particularly young boys at very low age, to change their perception of what is masculinity. And we are starting a program with an organization called Promundo on that, which is very interesting and very promising.
I could talk to you forever, but I know everyone will be upset with me. However, I have to ask, because you have taken a position as a thought leader, what are some examples from some of your colleagues in the luxury brand, in the fashion industry, that really have joined you in this fight?
Well, many companies are doing many things, and Nike is doing things. L'Oréal recently has really taken a stand on our side on fighting violence on women very consistently. And we have funded with L'Oréal, BNP, this network of European companies to fight gender-based violence, and also using the workplace to fight domestic violence, to try to train our teams to detect and to act when something happens around them, when it comes to domestic violence. So all that type of thing, yeah, we're working on that with very good partners.
Francois, finally, can you tell us what you think the role of companies are to advance society along with governments and NGOs?
Well, we need to take our own responsibility. Companies, corporations, we are responsible for many of those situations. We cannot just wait that governments solve everything. So, of course, the environmental situation, and this is why I decided to accept the mission that President Macron gave me with the Fashion Pact. But not only, I think that companies in the 21st century, we need to have a sense of purpose that goes much beyond our business goals, as part of the strategy of the company, as part of the culture of the company. And we shouldn't be afraid, as companies, as leaders, to take bold position, public position on certain very important societal topics. Recently, for instance, through Gucci, we took a position against early marriage or forced marriage in supporting a Pakistani filmmaker, Charmin, if I remember the name, Charmin Obaid Shinoy. That's her. She had already 2 Oscars for that. So we took a stance 2 years ago for gun control in America. We financed the march of the young people in America to the extent of $500,000. So let's not be afraid of doing that. That's the right thing to do. We have to be sincere when we do that. Let's do it for our own people, but also for the community. And it's just a matter of endorsing our responsibilities towards all the communities we are interacting with.
Sir, you are a real example. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And I really want to thank you for your advocacy. It's also, with the success of Kering, obvious that gender diversity, equity, and inclusion is a business imperative, and it will make